Hey everyone, I thought it would be really fun to have a little sketchbook date together, which is, just chilling and hanging out and drawing with me. So get your sketchbook out or a little piece of paper and a pen, something, and let's just have fun sketch and doodle together. You saw I have another sketchbook here that I'm working in, and I was just doodling randomly in it, and some of the easiest things that I can draw and pretty much pull from memory are ladybugs and clovers, but particularly this ladybug I did look at a reference. I just added the stars, and why not just draw it in my other sketchbook, but I want to use paint. I recently made some gifts for a friend and I used gouache paint for that project, and I still have that paint because I use a wet palette, so I want to just continue using that paint and use it up and just have fun and paint in here. I feel like I don't think I've ever done a gouache painting on this channel ever. And if you don't know what gouache is, when I first started using it in art school, it was described to me as if acrylic and watercolor paint had a baby. It's kind of a mix of both because you can really water it down to a very thin, watered down kind of paint, or you could use it to almost its full thickness without much water, although it would usually be pretty dry like that. So it is recommended to use a certain amount of water. It can be a little tricky, especially if you're using it for the first time, and so I was very excited for that portion of the class that we were going to be using gouache paint, which I've never really had formal training of or really figured out how to use. I've had these since then, so sometimes I dive back to painting, and then if you saw my sketchbook tour, I have a couple of paintings in there using gouache paint, but this is my first official time using it on camera. And funnily enough, right after I painted the red portion of the ladybug, I realized that I wanted some kind of background, some kind of underpainting, so I watered down the red that I was using a little bit more and used that as a background. And I'm also using brown instead of black for what are normally the black parts of a ladybug or most insects, and the only reason I'm doing that is because I just want to use up this paint and I don't want to get out new paint that I probably won't use very much. And so sometimes I like to use unconventional colors for drawing things or painting things, and what that means is maybe using blue for skin tones, or using different colors for animals that aren't those colors. That's kind of what that means, at least when I explain it. And so yeah, I also am incorporating those stars that I did in the doodle. I'm just basically painting my doodle exactly as I could. One of the most fun things about having multiple sketchbooks or using multiple sketchbooks at the same time is that I can use one just for ideas for my other sketchbook, or I can do all the weird doodles that I wouldn't want to see in my more regularly used sketchbook. And I actually have a third sketchbook that I'm also currently using, but I haven't used it since probably the summer or before the summer. It's one of the smaller sketchbooks that I like to use sometimes, and I don't know, I just kind of abandoned it. It is, sitting on my desk in the corner still while I have my two new sketchbooks right in front of me for more easy access. But I love to use mixed media sketchbooks more than anything because I'm not always using markers or pencils to draw things. I like to use paint or alcohol markers that tend to bleed, and I'm not going to be able to have fun using that in a sketchbook that has really thin paper. And I don't always just draw with pencil either. I like to do other things on top of my pencil drawings, so that's sort of why I stopped using that. And it's okay to have sketchbooks that you don't use anymore, because they'll always be there for when you go back to it, and it's fine to buy new sketchbooks too, even when you haven't finished your previous one. Sometimes you just need a boost and a clean new slate to start over and do stuff. Growing up, I would always have multiple sketchbooks that I was using at the same time, or sketchbooks that I was using for school, all different sized sketchbooks. I just had too many sketchbooks that I was not always finishing the pages in, or even covering the entire pages. So I think that's sort of why I started to adapt to be able to change that as I got older. Now I stick to one sketchbook, or sometimes two at the same time. but typically I try to finish those before I buy new ones, because the new sketchbook is the reward and finishing the sketchbook is the ending. So, you know, the reward is getting a new sketchbook and having all new ideas and probably all new like types of drawings. I've definitely improved in some of my drawing skills over time. Looking back at some of my other sketchbooks from maybe 2 years ago, my newer ones or drawings are a lot better, a lot, you know, more cohesive in them instead of those older ones. So my point is that there aren't really rules for art, and you don't have to feel guilty about that stack of sketchbooks that you might have that you haven't finished yet. You know, because a lot of artists do it. It's a kind of a common thing of having a lot of sketchbooks over many years, or having so many that you just haven't finished yet. It is totally okay, and it is really common in the art community, I think. While that little gouache painting is drying, I'm gonna go back to my other sketchbook to do some more doodling, because I felt really inspired and I just felt like drawing more, and I didn't want to turn the page while the painting was still wet. So I'm gonna be going back to this other sketchbook that I had that doodle in, and I'm gonna draw somebody with a really cool manicure set. I have a drawing in here in a previous page that you might have saw in the beginning of the video when I was flipping pages. I used these markers to draw a nail set, and they had like really starry nails, and I like the color combination that I use. And for this, I'm gonna sort of do the exact same thing but with a different reference photo, and I literally just grabbed 3 random markers that I kind of thought would look nice together, because I kept using like the same 2 colors for multiple pages and I wanted to switch it up and use different colors. So I have this beautiful bright orange and a pastel purple and like a teal-ish green, like a mint sort of color, and I unintentionally grabbed all 3 pastel colors, but I just wanted a color that I could sketch with, another color that I could do some shadows with, and I didn't have an idea for a third color, what to do with that color. I ended up coloring in the background for that with that third color. And I know this might sound silly, but I didn't even realize that I was drawing hands. I was more focused on the nail art. So if you are struggling with drawing hands, I think that might be a cool tip to like find some cool nail art and be more inspired by the nail art than the scariness that you might get from drawing hands. I don't normally draw hands if you follow my art, but you know, I try to go back into like warming up and like reminding myself that I can draw some things. I did a short series years ago of like drawing things I wasn't good at, and I drew like a side profile thing because I only drew like symmetrical front facing portraits for a really long time, and anytime I drew anything from a side profile, it just always looked horrible. So I wanted to test myself and draw that. And ears are also a bit tricky because of there's like so much going on, and so I wanted to draw that, and I added like a bunch of earrings because that made it more interesting, and it was fun to draw like different kinds of piercings. So find pictures or references that inspire you, or with the hands, find maybe somebody that had really cool rings and focus more on the rings, and then the hands are kind of an afterthought because you're more focused on one thing. So I didn't even realize I was doing that. I know it might sound silly that I didn't realize I was drawing hands, but really I was more inspired by the nail art. You might have noticed that as I'm drawing in the sketchbook with these alcohol markers that the paper is very squeaky, and I think that's because the pages are kind of glossy. And this is a newer sketchbook, actually created by an artist, so they made this bleed proof sketchbook, and I realized right away that it sounds very squeaky when I use these markers, but I think the glossiness really adds for like the smoothest blending with these markers especially. And here's a example of that. I'm using that base color that I did for the skin tone, and I'm going to use it to blend this shadow color. Pretty much blends like butter. It is amazing. This kind of paper is very new to me, and I just can't stop thinking about like how smooth the blending has become using this kind of paper. I've never used glossy sketchbooks before, so this was a bit of a learning curve, but I realized that like it is perfect for drawing and blending with alcohol markers with. And I just want to quickly mention that I did say that this is like a bleed proof sketchbook. The only reason that I'm using this like protective sheet that, you know, some alcohol markers come with is because when I use these markers, I tend to accidentally start drawing on the edge of the next page, and I just didn't want to mess up that page if I planned to do something else where I need it to be completely blank. So sometimes I'll put one of these sheets behind the page that I'm drawing on, but other times it's not really that big of a deal. But I just thought that I needed the next pages to be blank for some reason, so that's why I'm using that. It is a bleed proof sketchbook, and I know that those are for preventing bleeding through sketchbooks, like the pages. I don't know, in case you were wondering. Hey, popping back in for the last time to just say thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed this little sketchbook date, and I hope you also drew along with me, and let me know if you like this kind of video. I really like the ASMR sounds that I got with all the different materials that I was using, and I just had a lot of fun just like drawing with everything that I got. I used gouache paint and markers in here, and I drew all different kinds of things, surprisingly. I thought I would kind of stick to drawing sort of similar things, but somehow I ended up just drawing whatever I wanted, and that is the best part of drawing in your sketchbook. You can draw whatever the heck you want. And I basically drew all the kinds of things that I like. I love drawing portraits, and I guess lately I started liking drawing hands, or I just kind of like drawing like doodles, and you know, some of my favorite things like ladybugs and clovers. Although surprisingly I did not draw a single clover in here, but I did draw a couple of stars, and I just had a lot of fun. And I feel like that gouache painting I did was definitely like a warm-up for the next drawing, and then that was even a warm-up for this final drawing. And this definitely like shows a bit of my range here. I love to draw portraits, but I also have been diving into drawing all different kinds of things lately, and I love that about art, and I love that about drawing. And if you've gotten this far in the video, again, thank you. And if you haven't subscribed, please do that now. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. And I do hope to see you next time. Thank you so much for watching, and goodbye, everybody.